Our topic for this session is strengthening business with zero trust security model, building and implementing a security framework in the BFSI sector. I'll start by inviting our speakers for the session. The tables are almost up. So may I invite our moderator for the session, Mr. Ashton Chief Administrative Officer and CISO, Natwest Markets. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together, please. Our next speaker, Mr. Saket Verma, Practice Leader, Security, Kyndryl, India. Also, Mr. Suryanarayanan K, Chief Information Security Officer, Central Bank of India. May I now invite Mr. Naseem Halder, Chief Information Security Officer, Acko General Insurance. Mr. Gaurav Midha, Chief Information Security Officer, General Insurance Corporation of India. Mr. Manoj Kumar Srivastava, Chief Information Security Officer, Future Generali of India Life Insurance. I believe Mr. Manoj is not here. Mr. Praveen Mishra, Senior Vice President, Information Security, Yes Bank. And finally, Mr. S.V. Sunder Krishnan, Chief Risk Officer, Reliance Nippon, General Insurance. Ladies and gentlemen, please a huge round of applause for our esteemed panel. Come on, we can do a better job than that. Over to you, Mr. Ashton. Thank you.
Yeah, hello and good morning, everyone. Okay, so I must say thanks to everyone who's joined here. A big welcome to all my fellow panelists, as well as the attending guests and delegates. I'm happy to see the audience because given the lure and temptations of the location and the whatever is available out there, we still have an interested audience. So I'm just hoping we are all able to do justice to you today. Okay, coming to the discussion, and as the Pat called out, the topic that we are discussing today is zero trust security model and the implementation framework within the BFSI space. Having sat to the conversations yesterday and today, and also having had a look at the profile of the delegates and all our partners, I understand that most of us are industry experts and leaders in this very field. And so it may not be wise to comment and provide information that is already available with us. I'm sure most of us will be equally qualified to be sitting on this side of the table, on the chair here, and commenting on the very same topic. So because of that, I'll try to keep this a bit more conversationalist. Okay, we'll try to have a discussion around a few points, and we'll welcome feedback from the audience as we go to the rest of the conversation. If there are questions, do raise your hands to any of the panel members if you have a query, and we'll try to address it up front as well. Okay, so with that background, let's start off with the conversation. We've got a host of industry experts that covers the gamut of the BFSI space, right up from banking to financial services to insurance. And so we'll try to keep ourselves honest and maybe have a good conversation. So thank you once again, everyone. And let's start off with the discussion. Okay, so I'll start off with a very interesting point. Again, as I said, we'll not go through the rigmarole of what ZTA, etc. is and all. We'll start with the very interesting point, the term zero trust. So to quote a phrase that was made famous and attributed to Shakespeare, what's in a name? A rose would smell sweet with any other name as well. I'll try to extend that to zero trust. If we are basically talking about zero trust, we go into a boardroom meeting and quote zero trust, what sort of bells will it ring among the board members? So in short, what do you think of the name zero trust, and is it the right title to be providing to something like this? And I will leave it open. I'll start with maybe whoever has an opinion, or if not, then maybe we'll just go through the rest. So Saket, maybe you want to continue?
Okay, thanks. So as you rightly said, so I would rather counter Shakespeare here. There's a lot in a name, zero trust. While the name could have been anything else, zero risk or whatever, but But I think why this whole concept of zero trust has gained prominence in today's world. So as we are sitting here on 27th of August, 2022, why this thing is being discussed, this whole concept. And you're right, you can call it zero trust, zero risk, whatever. So there are three forces in my view which are acting concurrently at this point of time from a techno, social, political point of view. And it's making a perfect storm for us to really deliberate on this topic. So the first is the whole concept of globalization. Now we might say WTO is dead, alive, whatever, but the reality is that the supply chains are as integrated. We all are seeing, because if war happens in one part of the world, every other part of the world gets impacted, whether it is because of wheat supplies or it is because of oil prices, whatever, right? So globalization is one force. Now, you over and above globalization, you add to it the whole concept of digitization. And digitization will have two aspects. One is, the topic says, strengthening business. So what business? Business today is the digital avatar for many of the organizations, not only for cloud natives. For example, I was reading one of India's top public sector banks, the CMD was saying that we might monetize the app itself, right? They've already monetized the credit cards. So that means the app itself is the business. So for all cloud natives, if I'm going to book my tickets using some portal app on my phone, if that goes down, that means their business goes down. As a client, my expectation go down. So digitization has two sides. One is, digitization is the business avatar in many of the new age companies and even old age companies. Second is, the downside is very high, because if the digital environment goes down, the business goes down, right? Now, so we had two layers. We talked about globalization, we talked about digitization on top of that. Now the third layer is where the naughty boys come in, which is the hacker motivation and the hacker sophistication. Concurrently, what happened is that hackers a decade back were doing all the naughty things for maybe just disrupting the business, trying to get a bad name, trying to get a few dollars in terms of ransomware. But now the hacker motivation is very different. It is playing between the governments, between sovereign countries. They really want to disrupt your business because of very other malicious reasons. They want to, do all kinds of technology gymnastics in your environment. So the hacker motivation and their sophistication, they are now putting in sleeper bots. They are now putting in scripts which will get activated in a point of time. Both these things from a hacker side have really upped the game. So these three forces are making this whole zero trust theme very, very prominent. So globalization, on top of it, you add the steroids of digitization. On top of that, you add the deadly mix of hacker motivation and their sophistication. So they are always a step ahead of the industry and the government guys, right? So this is a deadly cocktail which brings the whole concept of zero trust, zero risk center stage. Zero trust is zero risk. Zero risk is zero tolerance, zero, I can't afford, zero affordability towards any breach in a nutshell, right? That's my point of view.
Thanks a lot for that, Saket. So you've actually briefly touched upon the need of zero trust, and you've given a very diplomatic answer, but you didn't actually address the question. Zero trust as a name, do you think it's the right name, or should it be called by some other name? So I'll lead it on to maybe Mr. Suryanarayanan. What is your opinion on the same?
Yeah, very good morning to all of you. The question is about the naming of zero trust, actually. My personal view is that zero trust is a negative word, actually. Okay. As he told, when we go to the board and all, they may not understand what is zero trust. Actually, we have to trust everybody. The very basic existence of the bank, the existence of the government itself is trust only. Okay. Without trust, there is no existence in anything in the world. So my personal view is the zero trust name, we can change to the trust plus. Okay, because zero trust is a negative word, and the customers are, as a bank is, I am representing a bank here, so the customers are putting their hard-earned money in the bank based on their trust only. So if they don't have the trust, the very existence of the bank is suffered. So whatever security solutions we are implementing towards this, to avoid the risk, to avoid the hackers, is to enhance the customers' trust on the bank. This is the other way, actually. We are trusting customers, we have to enhance their trust on the bank. That is why we are putting all these security measures, and that is my view on this.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Suryanarayanan. So again, we've got one person who believes that zero trust may not be the apt name, especially from a boardroom perspective. Does someone want to challenge it, or someone is, or everyone's on the same opinion?
No, let me give you an altogether different perspective, right? The world of intel and security, here nobody trusts anyone. That's the fact, okay? If we are not able to put any control, then we'll say, okay, I will trust you. So that is what, zero trust, conceptually, as on date, what we are doing, this zero trust framework and all these things, I try to solve the, access level problem. So that, nobody will come, nobody will, the unwanted people will not come to my infra, they will not see what I am doing, what I plan to do. But at the same time, our co-panelist, also mentioned something like, trust is something without that you cannot do. Like if we talk about the business side, might be a bank, might be insurance. For insurance, it's a little different, right? Altogether, you have to pay upfront the money, you have to show your trust. You're not sure that, after 6 months or 8 months, you will get the service or not, right? So trust is, different note. But in terms of security, I would say there is no trust at all till the time. Trust will only come if you don't have any control.
Sure. Thanks for that counter view. So that's also very interesting.
On
Yes,
the
Gaurav.
same lines, I would say, see, ultimately, if we think in another language, customized testing, either it is financial company or banking or insurance, customized testing on your services. And if by any means we are being targeted or we are attacked, so that test is being, breached. So zero trust is a new buzzword, and it has been more highlighted in the last couple of years since this pandemic started. But overall, to simply answer to your questions, name is correct. And if you see, it was not like the scenario that earlier we were having 100% test, and now we are talking about the 0% in test. If you see organization to organization, probably somebody say that we were testing 50%, 60%, 70%, but somehow now we are working or achieving towards this journey of zero test, which cannot be achieved in a day. It's kind of a long journey, but name-wise, I agree this is a correct name in long-term strategy.
Sure. Thank you, Gaurav.
Yeah, I would, since everyone has spoken, I just had an opinion, so I thought I should voice it out. So the concept of zero trust is primarily you build your controls as if you are breached. Okay, so you prepare that, you are breached, now what you will do. So right from multiple aspects. So what, I am not sure why this name was given, but just a guess, that we do not trust anyone when it enters. One, he is authenticated, when he's having the right role, when he is supposed to access that data, then only he would be trusted and he will give you the access. So the moment you enter, it is zero trust, but when you get the access, you are trusted.
Sure. Thanks a lot so much for that, Praveen. Mr. Sunder, you want to also comment on
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you said in the beginning, what's there in the name. Probably zero trust is a very strong word. I don't think we would reach there anytime. But if zero trust is universally understood now as something which is different in giving accesses as required rather than globally giving accesses, it makes sense. So I would support.
Great. Good to know from all of you. So again, we've got all security personnel out here, info security professionals. We won by a ratio of 5:1, 5 promoting zero trust against 1. I'm reserving my opinion. I'll still go to the audience.
It was just for discussion purpose. Okay?
Yeah, not holding you against it. I'll go back to the audience. Any counter views? We know already what's discussed, but anything else above that? Anyone in the audience? Okay, I'm not forcing you for an opinion, but let's just give by a show of hands. How many are for zero trust? Okay, so the audience has a better support for you, Mr. Suryanarayanan. How many are against the term, or they feel it's too strong a term? Okay, so let me share my opinion here. Okay, zero trust sounds right from a security professional perspective. As technical experts in the field, we all understand what zero trust is. But for a layman, it may be something where we are not looking at trusting the individual. So let's put it this way. 2 negatives make a positive. 2 positives still stay a positive. 1 negative, 1 positive still is a negative. 0 failures means positive, 2 negatives. No errors means positive, 2 negatives. Zero a negative, trust a positive. Zero trust stays a negative. So if we actually go with the term zero trust to the layman, what does the layman think? That I'm not trusted. What are we doing in banking? Only banking on trust. The entire relationship is based on trust. So within BFSI, does zero trust really work as a technical term? As a concept, it may be, yes, efficient. For a boardroom and for board members who may be laymen, not maybe technical experts, does it actually work? I'll just give you food for thought. We're not looking for a yes or a no answer here. Okay, so thanks everyone for that. I'll move on to the next question, and we'll just set the context here now. Before we get into zero trust, dive into the zero trust, what is zero trust? And what is ZTA? We talk about ZTA, we add an F at the end of it, we talk about ZTAF. We have a title which says Zero Trust Security Model. But what exactly is this? Is this a solution? Is this an architecture? Is it the F of the framework? What exactly is it? So I will again invite views. As I said, this is something that we are having a discussion. A debate may be a too strong a word, but I would want it to reach to a debate as well. So we'll definitely start with it. Mr. Sunder, I'll request you to go first.
So what I understand, again, my understanding could be limited, is that it's a framework. And of course, you can build an architecture around the framework. And definitely it makes sense because the traditional approach is tough now, given the transformation, digital transformation, remote working, and various other spheres and processes that are happening in the BFSI space. So given the changes that are occurring due to the transformation, due to remote access, due to the rapid attacks that have been perpetrated against BFSI by the hacking world, and also given various spheres of social media accesses, you need a better and sounder architecture or a framework. And yes, zero trust architecture has been built on the framework. I'm not sure how effective the frameworks are or the architectures are at this juncture, because when I read up the way it is done, it's quite tough to achieve. It's very tough to achieve. Even as it is, we are struggling to secure our architecture against whatever the attacks are. So given that, I think it's evolving phase now. Quicker the organization achieves it, better it is. Where you limit accesses to systems and resources based on need and not necessarily wholesale assignment. Having said that, even in zero trust architecture, I believe using ML and AI and analytics, you sort of give wholesale accesses because of the need and resources being required. And so if you again give wholesale accesses, but of course there is a back-end engine or a back-end support to do that. It's definitely better than current way of giving accesses. And as such, when you look at accesses, even now, without zero trust architecture, it is a struggle. Whatever you do in technology, in terms of support, in terms of identification mechanisms, etc. So given that, I think this is where it is. It's an evolving field yet.
Sure. Thanks for that opinion. I will take two more opinions from the panelists on this. So, Mr. Gaurav, if you want to go with an opinion.
It's an interesting question and topic. See, nowadays, if you see almost every second security vendor, or not even second, almost every security vendor is selling the solutions with the name of ZTA or ZTNA or Zero Trust and all that. And I personally sometimes meet few people who are not that tech savvy, and they ask, ultimately, what is this? Is this some tool or some software which will be implemented in a day, or what exactly it is? So when we talk about zero trust, see, it's a combination of multiple things. It's not one day activity, or it is something cannot be achieved overnight. Like, it's a combination of tools, your framework, your policies and procedures, ultimately too. And one can start that journey, and gradually they have to achieve that objective of the zero trust in a step-by-step approach. Like there are multiple things which we need to do in micro-segmentation. We have to implement multiple different tools. So depending on the individual standing in current times, they have to start that journey with that goal, and that's how it is. But there is a lot of confusion in the market, and many providers are there. So problem is that what and why that one has to identify as a customer, and how there are many to provide. Like solution providers are multiple. So there's no depth of that. That's my take.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. Thanks for that, Mr. Gaurav. I will go with the one person who had a negative view on the name Zero Trust only, Mr. Suryanarayanan. So we know that he doesn't agree with the name. Let's see what he has to say about the framework and the architecture. So, Mr. Suryanarayanan, your view.
Yeah, actually Zero Trust, as I already told, it is a concept. It is not a tool or a solution which we can implement. Okay, by implementing this solution, we have achieved Zero Trust. It is not like that. So being a concept, I can say that it is not a new concept for the banks, especially in banks, because banks are directly dealing with money and customers. Customers have access to all the systems of the bank because their mobile is their bank, their laptop is their bank, everything is their bank. So it is not a new concept for the bank. Okay, of course the word Zero Trust may be new, but the concept, what are the ingredients of this concept is already, most of the concept is already implemented in the banks. Okay, we are authenticating the customers with two-factor authentication. We are device binding is there, user behavior analysis is there. That means we are ensuring that the correct customer is accessing bank systems. Of course, being a security is not 100% perfect. There are, of course, scope for improvement in future also that all banks will take care.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Mr. Suryanarayanan. So again, so what we get as a gist is Zero Trust, as the statement says, is a security model, an architecture, or a framework. So not something that is a solution and a product. Okay, it could come in various guises. It could be based on your need, but it is a framework. It is not a single stop, and it's something that is continuously evolving. Okay. To the other points that you made, Mr. Suryanarayanan, one is you said that we've already adapted it as a bank. We've been adopting it, maybe in a different disguise, in a different name, etc. Zero Trust is fairly new, and I use the term fairly new because all said and done, it's more than a decade old. So it was something that was coined by Forrester. It was, I think, coined in the year 2012. You can Google search it. I'm not actually absolutely sure on that, but it's still more than a decade old. So the concept was there, but somehow it was not formed in the manner it should have been. And that brings us maybe to the next question that we have. Given the Zero Trust security model, etc., as banks, we may be following it. We are representing the BFSI space here, though. So does it seem something that should be made mandatory? Should it come as a mandate via the regulator, via someone who is of authority, etc.? Or should it be left optional to the institutions? So, Mr. Naseem, if you would want to just check on that.
Yeah, so regulatory mandate might be stressed to the business as well, right? I would say it's much more in terms of good to have, because if you regulatory mandate some of the concepts and of that architecture, it might be not that easy for all the tech leader to implement that architecture within 6 months or 1 year. They have a lot of dependencies, right? Every business has their own way to do business. Everybody is unique in terms of their own business. Might be for me it's very easy, right? So there are company like we fintech organization, we promote a cultural shift like that. You can work from anywhere. Even if I recall correctly, before pandemic, we are offering our employees to work from anywhere. You can work from continuous continuous work from home. If I recall, it might be IBM also have the similar kind of work culture. So those kind of work culture will enforce you to implement this kind of architecture or this kind of model to make sure that your infra, your assets are 100% secure. So over to, that is one thing I feel it should be a choice to the business. If you impact, if you are regulatory mandate this thing might be little difficult for all the business. Might be all the banks, all the insurance companies. Every people has their own way to business.
So I think Nadeem speaks as part of insurance within the BFSI space. Maybe I'll ask for a fellow banker, maybe Praveen, if you can have a view. So mandatory, yes, no, and reasons. And again, maybe if you could, sorry to do that to you, but if you could also add maybe what are the key deliverables or challenges that you would think of? What are the key drivers and challenges?
Okay. So now, as you rightly said, that this zero trust term is existing since a decade, but then it got prominence in last 2 years, and thanks to the pandemic, probably for the digital service providers, digital world has grown, right from banking to e-commerce to cash payments, everything has changed. So now when something good happens, there is certainly something bad waiting for you as well. So we already seen how in the geopolitical crisis of Russia, Ukraine, how Ukraine was impacted. The banking services were stalled. Even though they are having money, they can't go to the ATM and withdraw, or they can't do net banking or do transfer to anyone. So having money is having the money, but you can't make use of it. And that was done by a hacker. Okay. So I know it sounds scary, but then, so from the regulator perspective, I think they should certainly put some checks in place so that we can avoid such situations. Okay, that's the first part. And then as a banking organization, because we have, it's not just that we make money, because now it is not just the market risk. We have the reputation risk as the major challenge. If you know, we had some data leaks in last 2-3 months, but then that did not impact anyone because it was just their email address or their phone numbers which is gone. But then when you link it with your account ID, then you land up in the trouble. So that's where the concept of zero trust, I would like to throw some light on this zero trust. Everyone rightly said it is not a new thought which has come in. It's just that it is trying to integrate all the silos, because every solution is in a silo. None of the solution talk to each other. So I would like to just give a brief what my understanding of zero trust is. So we want to go beyond the perimeter for security. So right now everyone is dependent on firewall or VPNs for our perimeter security. But then after, if that is breached, we are gone. So that's where zero trust can be helpful when you put in application ring fencing, putting micro-segmentation, and also integrating everything with SIM. So the deliverable parts, the idea is to have all the security solutions at every layer of defense, okay, talk to each other, or rather build a correlation and give a holistic view to the SIM for continuous monitoring. So that is the key deliverable which we expect from zero trust. And the challenge, what I feel is, the moment you start with the API, which is the new buzzword which has disrupted many things. So the moment you try to isolate or micro segment a network, you find that there are 10, 15, 20, hundreds of APIs talking to it. So that's another challenge. You do a micro segmentation and add 100 connections to it, then it's no longer a micro segment. It becomes part of your LAN. So it's not just a VLAN, it becomes your LAN. So there are challenges back and forth, and certainly it has to evolve more to get to this, a phase where we can say, yes, we have implied zero trust or implemented it.
Sure, thanks a lot, Praveen. Those are fair points you have made. I know Sunder is very eager to jump in. So Sunder, anything your view?
Yeah, so I'm part of a committee that helps the regulator to frame. I was just thinking, how do I target the problem? So what we did for remote access was, when those companies which had remote access, we prescribed some. So those companies which did not have remote access, and that is where the investment function doesn't work from home, they work from the offices, we didn't apply those rules. So similarly, so it will be very harsh on some players to face this zero trust architecture, and there's nothing specific yet as of now from a regulatory standpoint. So it's very difficult to implement across. architecture-based access. But conceptually, it makes sense when you have digital transformation, when you have remote access, when you have digitalized, and you have so much of problems across facing so many attacks and challenged all along. So given that, if you are in that kind of environment, then of course you should follow certain more prescriptions, and therefore regulators should move in there, saying if you do remote access, you need to implement these additional controls. If you have digital transformation, maybe you look at zero trust framework of giving accesses rather than going by the holistic method or the ancient method. And therefore, you'll have to test firewalls and architecture in the new sort of environment. So you can't have same set of rules for different players. There are players who stay back and say, we don't want to be the first movers. We would be the traditional players. So you'll have to give them a chance. Yeah.
Sure, thanks for that, Sunder. And let's not end without getting a partner view on board. Okay, so we basically have Saket from Kyndryl. What's your view on the zero trust? Mandatory? Should it be made mandatory to BFSI? What could be key challenges? What could be key drivers?
Thank you, sir. So I think as a principle, regulation should always be minimal because of a couple of reasons. A, there is a cost of regulation, right? Even in BFSI, there's already enough regulation. And history also tells us many times disruptions happened, unwanted occurrences happened in spite of regulation. So regulators and regulation has to be very forward-looking. That's point number one. Point number two, in this case of zero trust, it's so comprehensive that regulation at this point of time it's very difficult. I think our colleagues commented there, I'm not able to fathom how it can really do justice in regulating zero trust as a philosophy or approach. Because it's just, going back to the initial question you raised, the philosophy, it's the mindset, it's the approach. So it's very intangible. How do you regulate towards zero trust as a philosophy? And the third point is it's also very specific to individual organizations, let's say within BFSI, we have at different kinds of businesses, insurance, banking, even if you go beyond that, fintech and BFCs, etc. So it's something very, very, very unique challenges to every organization. So rather than regulation, it will be good if we can have forward-looking advisories and guidelines, which should be more enlightening to the whole ecosystem of the players, because not everybody is a big bank, not everybody is a large bank which has all the resources, right? So for the up-and-coming neobanks, for NBFCs, etc., it is also enlightening that what they should and should not be doing. So those kind of advisories and guidelines will be, I think, more useful than adding up to the regulation, which might not be adequate.
Okay, sure. Thanks a lot, Saket. So that's very well put. Again, we've gone to the group. I think the consensus, and it's unilateral, is unanimous, is basically zero trust as a mandate is a no-go. We cannot have a blanket mandate. We could definitely have guidelines put in place of what should be done, what can be done, to be able to form a structure for the sector and the industry in particular. Right? So thanks a lot for your views. Just a pause here. Any contra view that comes in from the audience? Does someone still not believe what the experts have to say? Okay, I guess everyone's on the same page. And with that, let's then dive into maybe the big event that we have seen, or the significant event that we have seen in the last century, COVID. Okay, it's been spoken about in length. We've been speaking about it for the last 2 years. It's gone a bit silent now, thankfully, for good reasons. But COVID happened 2 years back. COVID lasted for 18 months, and COVID impacted us a lot from a social perspective, from an economic perspective, and from a lot of ways we actually do business and we think as well. Coming back to zero trust and COVID. My question to the audience and to the panel first would be what is the impact of COVID in terms of the entire zero trust thinking? A, do you think that zero trust has only gained importance because of COVID? Again, just some food for thought. B, or do you think that zero trust would have been here to stay, irrespective of whether COVID happened? COVID was just a coincidence. So maybe I'll start with Gaurav. I know Naseem, you will also want to come in, but I'll just start with Gaurav.
Only thing I would say that due to this COVID, this focus and importance of zero trust Definitely it was about to come. Only thing it has come early, probably due to COVID, 2 years early. That focus and that kind of significance what we are getting. See, before pandemic, when it started, if we see in a holistic view, there were few organizations who were quite mature digitally. And while at the same time, there were many who were not digitally mature and they were forced to adopt all of the sudden overnight to have different kind of digitization initiatives to cope up with the scenario at that point of time. Now, had COVID not be there, then probably whatever things were going on, it could have been stretched further for a few years. Ultimately, it had to come. With increasing, digital foot space, increasing cyber threats day by day, it's bound to come. It's not a choice. One has to adopt. Only thing, last question we were discussing, mandatory or optional. It cannot be mandatory because it's not that easy to achieve. But at the same time, every organization has to work in one or other way based on their current status towards this target. And due to pandemic, we are talking this in 20 to 22 with too much significance. Had pandemic not be there, probably it could have been in 25, 26. Thank you. That's my take.
Sure. Thanks for that. Nadeem, what about you?
Yeah, I know I would completely agree with Gaurav. Whatever he said, it's correct. The only thing I would say, it's pandemic just become work as a catalyst here, right? So there are certain cases we have seen. There are some traditional businesses, they have never seen in last 100 years that there were certain days they're not, they're not able to function, they're not able to work, right? So that digitalization was there, and I can recall in 2015-16 we are more talking about cloud adoption, digitalization, those things, and we have done this thing. So basically, I would say everything's required some push, some requirement, and that push and that requirement come from that COVID pandemic. That's why this zero trust, I would say get some more speed to to implement in this complete system. Over to you.
Sure. Thanks for that opinion, Nadeem. Mr. Suryanarayan, as a public sector bank, etc., what is your opinion on the same question?
Yes. The zero trust concept was even before COVID also. But as my fellow colleagues told that it was a catalyst because everybody has understood the importance of having the same. But otherwise also this zero trust concept and the customer-centric initiatives, security initiatives were there. But of course, the COVID has shown as a catalyst, and all the organizations, whoever is not having that concept was also understood the requirement of the same, and they have started implementing. And coming to the regulation side, as all of you know that banking is one of the most regulated industry in the country. Reserve Bank of India is controlling all the banks in the country by various advisories, circulars and all. And all the controls towards the zero trust, of course the zero trust word you will not find as of now in any of the RBI documents and all, but all the requirements towards zero trust is already mandated for the banks. RBI has mentioned this digital payment security controls advisories and cyber security framework for the banks. All the requirements mentioned it as towards zero trust security only, maybe one step ahead.
Sure. Thanks a lot for that, Mr. Suryanarayan. Any of the other panel members want to share a view? Saket, you want to go?
Yeah, so very quickly. So I think I would like to emphasize this one component. Because of COVID within cyber security or zero trust framework, I think the attack surface as a theme has really gained certain stage. So what did COVID impact the most? What did COVID bring center stage? So with all the work from home and remote working, it was the attack surface vector, right? The attack surface area. So that whole, it brought in fluidity to the, to the attack surface, and the controls have to be rethought of. So while traditionally we all were going to offices, let's say, and we are working in a certain environment, all of a sudden it was no longer the perimeter security, it became a virtual security boundary, right? So that fluidity to the attack surface, the technical term or the jargon, that has been brought center stage because of COVID. So if COVID was not there, this thing would not have taken certain stage. And because zero trust is more of a inside out philosophy, a lot of controls and a lot of focus has been brought on to this as a theme. Now, to arrest that, you have to put in controls, you have to put in trainings, you have to put in processes, and you have to put in whatnot. So I think from that perspective, COVID did impact all of us, not only, of course, the clients as banks and BFSI, other industries, but also as partners. Because even if the SME sector, if somebody is running a warehouse or a small establishment, he also had to start doing invoicing in a different way or taking orders in a different way because of COVID. So again, the attack surface as a theme was brought in certain stage, and with that, the associated controls, behaviors, trainings, etc. requirements. So I think that is the biggest takeaway from a zero trust or a cyber security perspective.
Yes, Mr. Sunder, you want to go?
Yeah, so we prescribed about 30, 40 additional controls due to COVID and remote access in the insurance industry. So it wasn't there earlier. And certainly COVID has changed and it is going to change further. Even if COVID isn't there, people are now working in hybrid environment. And it's not that everybody works from office. And so for cost reasons, and resource allocation and seats and place and infrastructure cost, hybrid is going to continue. The technology world is totally into hybrid sphere now, world over. And so you'll have to look at new ways to tackle the new risks that are there, and therefore you would need to have more controls and security.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sunder. Praveen, since you are the last person left, do you want to go now also with a view, or how you?
So, COVID has forced us to adopt the digital world. So that's where many things changed. Regulation. So rightly said, there is a digital payment security guideline which is very stringent, probably more complex than the zero trust. It specifies everything in minute detail, and that's probably the most comprehensive circular given by RBI, which is very clear and concise, unlike the other ones which are open-ended statements. So that way, COVID has certainly make us adopt, and the moment we adopt, we are getting into the rest. So we need to have our safety security done either through zero trust or these silos, because zero trust is not a one technical solution. It has multiple components. So probably we have to go phase-wise. It depends. How do we plan it? And at least for crown jewels, it is mandatory. That's what I would say.
Sure, great. Thanks. I think we've had views from all members on board. I'll summarize it. As we have said, zero trust, and Mr. Suryanarayanan had alluded to in one of his earlier responses, banks have always been following it. Zero trust as a concept is not new. The name may be new. As banks, we have followed it. We would be getting there. COVID simply has accelerated it, etc. And it has, in a way, been required because of the new ways and new normal. As again, that was also a very popular theme: new normal, new ways of working, etc. So that's where we are on zero trust. Playing devil's advocate, let me just throw a spanner in the works and give you some alternate thinking to consider. We talk about COVID accelerating the need for zero trust and COVID accentuating the need for zero trust. But we should be also aware that within the first 3 months of COVID, when COVID hit us and we all of a sudden overnight had to work from home, we actually reduced our security controls to a large extent to allow work from home. So while talking about zero trust, what we had in the guise of whatever zero trust, we had actually reduced that. And I'll give you examples from SEZ zones. There are certain restrictions to ITES companies, etc. We had relaxed all of that to enable work from home. On the banking side, and we being bankers on this panel, RBI had allowed trading to happen from home, minus voice recording. So again,
insurance
while we say
also.
Insurance as well. Yes, Mr. Sunder, thanks for bringing that up. So let's consider this. Events that occur may help you to be able to strengthen your controls for a future, but at the same time, those events also need you to be able to take a liberal view and relax something as well to enable business to go forward. Okay, so with that thought in mind, I will actually come to bring this conversation to the end. I'll ask all panel members to just give you one quick view, maybe in a sentence, if you could summarize it, TA. So starting at the end, Mr. Sunder.
So the evolving changes of digital transformation, COVID, has resulted in a reorientation of the security process, architecture, and framework.
I support that. It's just that the way we adopt digital world, we have to adopt the security practices or architecture as well.
I would say this concept is going to stay. Every organization, based on the sector and based on their current, digitization level, they have to adopt it as per their business need with time. So there cannot be one size doesn't fit all, and that philosophy applicable here.
I know it's, I also agree with all the fellow members that yes, it would be there and it will be more polished in near future. There are, new access point or data points we are verifying in terms of zero trust. I'm sure all the partners are doing new innovation over there as well, how to make it more refined, how to make it more visible, and it will be there. It will going to help a lot to the complete industry.
Yes, it is evolving considering the increased digitization and attack surface. This concept of security, zero trust or what, it will continue. It is a continuous process. It is a requirement of the day actually.
Yeah, I think zero trust is the holy grail for, as a philosophy, as an approach, as a thought process, as far as cybersecurity overall is concerned, and it stands, I think, even a step over, a level over the NIST framework, which till now has been the bulwark of most of the design thinking going into it. So as the forces of digitization, globalization, hacker motivation, sophistication, as these things keep on going up, the relevance of zero trust as a philosophy will only increase, and that's going to stay for sure.
Sure. Thanks once again for all those insights. They've been very helpful. I will summarize it with a statement of my own. Zero trust is real. Zero trust is here to stay. Zero trust is noble as a framework. As a name, it should be trust but always verify. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much to our incredible panelists for that wonderful session. Now, may I request once again Mr. Baldeo Purushartha, Joint Secretary, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Government of India, to please present a memento to all of our speakers. Can we please put our hands together, everybody? First to Mr. Ashton de Cruz, Chief Administrative Officer and CISO Natwest Markets. So if we could just request you to come right in the center of the stage so that we can get better pictures, please. Thank you. Next to Mr. Saket Verma, Practice Leader Security, Kyndryl, India. Next to Mr. Suryanarayanan K, Chief Information Security Officer, Central Bank of India. Next to Mr. Naseem Halder, Chief Information Security Officer, Acko General Insurance. To Mr. Gaurav Midha, Chief Information Security Officer, General Insurance Corporation of India. To Mr. Praveen Mishra, Senior Vice President, Information Security, Yes Bank. And finally, to Mr. S.V. Sunder Krishnan, Chief Risk Officer, Reliance Nippon General Insurance. Now Now can we please have a group photo with all of our panelists? Thank you.